Right now, Little House on the Prairie. It was a family favorite in the 70s and 80s.
The beloved series Little House on the Prairie may have appeared wholesome on screen, but what went on behind the scenes tells a very different story. This iconic TV show certainly left a lasting mark on audiences, with many fans holding on to fond memories of its heartwarming episodes.
Remembering so much and so much of my childhood and so many wonderful experiences and emotional experiences.
However, the real-life personalities of the cast were often worlds apart from the roles they played. If you grew up watching the show, you won't want to miss what's coming. Get ready to uncover the bloopers, on-set mishaps, and juicy behind-the-scenes secrets that reveal a whole new side to Little House on the Prairie. Let's jump in and explore the untold truths behind the wholesome facade. While Little House on the Prairie painted an image of innocence and small-town charm, what happened off-camera was far more complicated. Take Laura Ingalls and Nellie Oleson, for example. On screen, they were fierce enemies. But behind the scenes, Melissa Gilbert and Allison Arngrim were anything but rivals. In fact, they became fast friends after meeting in the makeup trailer and quickly bonded. Their friendship led to sleepovers, inside jokes, and a shared love of pranking their fellow cast members, proving it wasn't all business on set. Their playful dynamic added a bit of lightheartedness to the otherwise demanding filming schedule. But not all relationships on set were so cheerful. Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie, revealed that the actor who portrayed her on-screen husband, Percival, would often engage in dramatic public displays of affection with co-stars, sometimes right in front of a young and impressionable Melissa Gilbert. Gilbert, who was still quite innocent, found those moments awkward and uncomfortable. But that was just scratching the surface. Behind the curtain, Little House had a surprisingly dark undercurrent. Addiction quietly crept through the cast and crew. Alcohol, in particular, flowed freely during production. At times, it almost seemed like liquor was a staple on set, perhaps to ease nerves or forge camaraderie, but it often caused more harm than good. Michael Landon, the show's creator and star, had a known fondness for alcohol. He was said to begin his mornings with Irish coffee and continue drinking throughout the day. Reports claim the crew would plow through 230 cans of Coors beer daily. On rough days, that number could reach 3 full cases. Over time, Landon's dependence on alcohol became obvious, and many believed it worsened his health struggles, particularly as he faced a battle with pancreatic cancer later in life. The show itself was adapted from the real-life experiences of Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote about growing up in the Midwest during the late 19th century. While the series often romanticized pioneer life, the reality of homesteading was far harsher than the screen portrayed. The U.S. government had glorified the lifestyle to attract settlers, but life on the frontier was filled with backbreaking labor, isolation, and hardship. One particularly complex dynamic was that between Melissa Gilbert and Michael Landon. After losing her father at a young age, Gilbert looked up to Landon as a surrogate dad. He embraced the role, telling her he loved her like his own daughter. Their bond was unshakable until Landon left his wife for Cindy Clerico, a makeup artist from the show. The scandal hit Gilbert hard. Feeling betrayed, she cut off contact with Landon for some time. Eventually, time softened the wounds. When Landon became gravely ill with cancer, Gilbert reached out. They reconciled before his death in 1991. Years later, in a touching tribute, she named one of her children after him, a symbol of forgiveness and the enduring impact he had on her life. So while Little House on the Prairie may have seemed like the picture of perfection, its backstage stories tell a more human and often emotional tale. Michael Landon. Michael Landon was a towering presence in television history, best known for his impressive 14-year run on Bonanza before becoming the driving force behind Little House on the Prairie. He didn't just star in the beloved series, he also directed, wrote, and produced it. The show, which launched in 1974 through a partnership with NBC producer Ed Friendly, quickly earned a place in viewers' hearts and became a cherished classic. Though he played the role of a devout Christian father on screen, Landon's personal beliefs were far more nuanced. Born Eugene Maurice Orowitz to a Catholic mother and Jewish father, he eventually adopted the stage name Michael Landon as he pursued acting. Raised in New York and New Jersey, he felt a stronger connection to his father's Jewish roots. Yet he never fully embraced any organized religion. Instead, his faith was deeply personal, a blend of heritage and individual spirituality. Landon's life was filled with personal battles. He grew up in a troubled home where he lived in constant fear of his mother's attempts at self-harm. These childhood traumas manifested physically. He struggled with bedwetting, a painful issue he openly addressed in Aileen Joyce's biography. Michael Landon, his triumph and tragedy. Interestingly, Landon's signature curly brunette hair wasn't natural. He began going gray in his 20s and resorted to dyeing it himself using Clairol. However, after just a few days under the California sun, his hair would take on a purplish tint. This led him to eventually entrust the task to professional colorists who could manage the upkeep more reliably. It's ironic. Had he taken the opportunity, he could have been the perfect spokesperson for Clairol. As he grew older, maintaining that youthful appearance became increasingly difficult. Frequent dye jobs were necessary to combat the effects of both studio lighting and intense sunlight. Yet Landon remained committed to his on-screen image, one of strength, charisma, and unwavering presence. Behind the scenes, the show's cast had its own share of drama. Jonathan Gilbert, who portrayed the mischievous Willie Olson, was more than just a co-star to Melissa Gilbert. He was her adopted brother in real life. This made for an unusual dynamic on screen, where Laura, Melissa's character, occasionally had romantic tension with Willie. Thankfully, their characters never developed a relationship, which surely saved family gatherings from awkward conversations. After the show wrapped, the siblings went in very different directions. Jonathan stepped away from acting entirely, pursuing a career in finance as a stockbroker in New York. Meanwhile, Melissa remained in the entertainment industry, even rising to lead the Screen Actors Guild from 2001 to 2005. In 2016, she dipped her toes into politics, running for Congress, but ultimately had to step aside due to lingering injuries from an earlier accident. Tensions weren't just limited to the Gilbert siblings. A long-standing Cold War existed between Melissa Gilbert and her on-screen sister, Melissa Sue Anderson, Mary Ingalls. What began as subtle distance evolved into a full-blown feud that lasted through all 9 seasons. According to Gilbert's memoir, Prairie Tale, she felt that Anderson was aloof and even hostile. She described her as cold, claiming they never formed a real bond. She wasn't easy to be around, Gilbert wrote, noting that Anderson's distant nature extended both on and off the set. The strain was so apparent that it became a topic of discussion among the rest of the cast. Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson, recalled Gilbert warning her, "Watch out for Melissa Sue Anderson. She's evil. I hate her. She tried to kill me." Though obviously exaggerated, Arngrim joked the moment felt like a scene out of a bizarre prison movie. Despite the theatrics, the warning left her feeling uneasy. Years later, at Michael Landon's funeral, Arngrim had a brief and distant run-in with Anderson. She tried to make small talk, asking about Anderson's newborn, only to be met with a curt response and cold departure. Feuds weren't limited to the young stars. Catherine McGregor, Mrs. Olson, earned a reputation for clashing with colleagues. While respected for her talents, she often overstepped by offering unsolicited advice on blocking, props, and line delivery. Allison Arngrim noted in her memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bee, that while McGregor's notes were technically helpful, her constant critiques became grating. But perhaps the most surprising behind-the-scenes conflict was between Karen Grassel, Caroline Ingalls, and Michael Landon. When Grassel pushed for a pay raise during contract negotiations, Landon, who was juggling multiple responsibilities as the show's creative force, did not take it well. Grassel recalled in her book, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, that he and others on set became frosty, even openly dismissive. Still, she acknowledged Landon's immense workload and ultimately respected his dedication. Filming wasn't always easy for the cast, especially for Melissa Gilbert, who faced discomfort with her character's romance storyline. At just 15 years old, she had to shoot her first on-screen kiss with Dean Butler, who was 23 at the time and playing Almanzo Wilder. Gilbert, understandably anxious, spoke to Landon about her concerns. To her relief, producers agreed to tone the scene down to a simple peck on the cheek. Not everyone was so supportive, though. Arngrim and Steve Tracy, Percival Dalton, known for their off-screen friendship, decided to tease Gilbert by pretending to be madly in love and staging exaggerated public makeout sessions to make her blush. What Gilbert didn't know at the time was that Tracy was gay, and their staged romance was just a bit of mischief. Despite their characters being fierce enemies, Melissa Gilbert and Allison Arngrim formed a genuine friendship behind the scenes. They hung out off-set, had sleepovers, and even teamed up to prank other cast members, like the time they wrapped a toilet seat in saran wrap to trick unsuspecting colleagues. Gilbert's bond with some cast members, however, didn't extend to everyone. Her feud with Melissa Sue Anderson remained unresolved. Some speculate that Anderson's isolated nature may have stemmed from her strict upbringing and overbearing mother, which could explain her difficulty forming friendships. Still, for all the tension, there were plenty of lighthearted moments. Michael Landon, the heart of the show, was known for his infectious humor and love of pranks. He passed on this mischievous spirit to the younger cast, especially Gilbert and Arngrim, who idolized him. Landon became a father figure not only to Gilbert, but also to Anderson, earning their trust and admiration despite behind-the-scenes disputes. Interestingly, Jonathan Gilbert, who played Laura's on-screen nemesis, was also her real-life brother. While they were close as children, their bond faded over time, as Melissa admitted in her memoir. Still, there's always hope they could reconnect, just as their TV characters eventually did. When Landon stepped back from acting in the show's final season, he focused more on directing and producing. The show shifted to Little House, A New Beginning, placing Laura and Almanzo at the story's forefront. Landon directed 90 episodes and was the creative mind behind both the pilot and the finale. Allison Arngrim shared fond memories of Landon's pranks during a 2018 appearance on The Today Show, including a hilarious story involving a female guest star's first day on set. Though Little House on the Prairie is remembered for its heartfelt, wholesome tone, its behind-the-scenes history tells a richer, more complex story, one full of drama, laughter, rivalries, and real-life bonds that continue to intrigue fans decades later. Laura Ingalls was pregnant on the show for over a year. One memorable example was Laura's seemingly endless pregnancy. Melissa Gilbert, along with Lenny Parker, the creator of a fan website, observed that Laura's pregnancy stretched across multiple seasons, lasting far longer than expected. When Laura first revealed she was expecting, it was likely spring or summer. Yet by the time the next summer rolled around, she was still visibly pregnant. Gilbert herself admitted she never realized how prolonged the storyline had become, joking, "Poor Laura, pregnant for over a year." Colonel Sanders. In a Season 8 episode titled Wave of the Future, Nellie Olson's restaurant is rebranded as Mrs. Sullivan's. However, Nellie soon realizes she's trapped by a franchise agreement that works against her interests. To help her escape the contract, Charles and Nels open a rival restaurant, successfully driving her business to close. Meanwhile, Colonel Sanders offers Harriet a chance to start her own chicken franchise. This is quite an anachronism since Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, wasn't born until 1890, and KFC wasn't established until 1952. Interestingly, the cast of Little House on the Prairie frequently enjoyed Kentucky Fried Chicken during dinner scenes, which may have been a subtle homage to the franchise. Melissa Gilbert mentioned in My Prairie Cookbook, "We ate a lot of fried chicken on Little House. Cross my heart, it's true. The fried chicken we ate on Little House on the Prairie was from KFC. Besides fried chicken, the cast also ate dishes like chicken and dumplings, Dinty Moore beef stew, Pillsbury biscuits, pies, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches." Gilbert noted that Nellie Olson's family typically had roast beef, potatoes, green beans, and gravy. Pies were often purchased from local grocery stores, while most other food came from the Paramount Studios cafeteria. There was usually plenty left over after filming, and instead of wasting it, the cast and crew happily shared the leftovers. Given the show's 1870s and 1880s setting, Colonel Sanders' cameo is a clear historical inaccuracy. Bloopers and facts about costumes on set. Melissa Gilbert reveals in her book that bloopers were a frequent occurrence on the set of Little House on the Prairie. According to Melissa Francis, who played Cassandra Ingalls, Michael Landon, star of the show and executive producer, was famously cheap as hell. Francis explained that Landon constantly looked for ways to cut production expenses. One clever method he used was recycling footage from earlier episodes, inserting these clips as flashbacks into new ones. Francis called this a totally brilliant way to save some dough, allowing the creation of new episodes without large costs. This practice might explain why bloopers appeared so often. A notable blooper occurs in the episode titled "Bless All the Dear Children," where Laura's baby is kidnapped around Christmas in Minneapolis. Despite the setting's famously cold weather, none of the characters wear coats. Gilbert said this happened because the show was filmed in Tucson, Arizona during summer, which she described as misery personified. Wearing heavy costumes like cotton stockings, petticoats, bonnets, pinafores, long skirts, and long-sleeve blouses under the scorching sun made filming tough. Temperatures often reached the low 90s, causing some cast members to faint. The show was actually filmed at Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley, California. Allison Arngrim, who portrayed Nellie Olson, wore a wig for her role. Her iconic big curls weren't natural, and the wig caused her scalp to bleed because it was secured with metal combs and straight hairpins. Arngrim shared in a Today Show interview with Megyn Kelly that the wig was quite painful to wear for long periods, though she thought it looked fabulous. Before the wig, they tried curling her naturally straight hair, but the humidity ruined the curls, leading to the decision to use a custom wig instead. Combined with heavy clothing, wearing that wig was quite a challenge for the young actress. Michael Landon himself wasn't the tallest member of the cast, but made sure he appeared tall on screen. To achieve this, he wore 4-inch heeled boots and insisted on being positioned slightly higher than the other actors, truly going all out to boost his stature. Carrie Ingalls, the youngest Ingalls sister, was portrayed by twins Lindsay and Sydney Bush, who were affectionately nicknamed Sugar Lump and Foxy Robin on set. Due to California labor laws, the twins rotated in the role, with Michael Landon calling for a fresh twin during filming. Both sisters received on-screen credit as Lindsay Sidney Greenbush, ensuring they both had their moments in the spotlight. In the Season 5 episode The Odyssey, there's a stunt where Albert is pushed off a train. A dummy is used for the fall, but it's clearly visible sitting in the grass as the stuntman rolls down the hill nearby. An amusing mistake that somehow slipped past the editors. Another continuity error happens in Season 3's Little Girl Lost. Mary closes a cabinet, but when the camera cuts to Laura, the cabinet is inexplicably open. Gilbert jokingly suggested the house might have been haunted. Rachel Greenbush, who played Carrie Ingalls, recounted how Michael Landon loved practical jokes. She and Melissa Gilbert would catch frogs during breaks and surprise Landon, who playfully pretended to eat them before letting the frogs hop in front of others, causing quite a commotion. The show had its share of bloopers and inconsistencies beyond pranks. For example, in episodes like The Monster of Walnut Grove and The Music Box, viewers noticed tree branches rustling outside a window near the girl's bed, despite no trees being visible elsewhere, a likely result of using stock footage or sound effects. Another recurring oddity was a family quilt with a double wedding ring pattern that appeared on various characters' beds, including Olsen's and Charles's parents, suggesting the reuse of props to save costs. Historical inaccuracies also appeared in costumes and hairstyles. Some characters wore clothing not appropriate for the 1870s and 1880s. For instance, Caroline was occasionally seen wearing a bra, which wasn't invented until 1912. Hairstyles like curly perms were more reflective of 1970s fashion. Melissa Gilbert admitted her character's hair was often too long and modern for the era. The character Albert presented a storyline inconsistency. In a TV movie, Albert seemingly dies, but a later episode reveals he grows up to become Walnut Grove's respected doctor. This confusion frustrated fans, including one Reddit user who surprised their boyfriend with this trivia. The boyfriend even arranged for Gilbert to send a personalized video addressing the inconsistency. Gilbert joked that Albert must have returned as an undead zombie doctor still serving the town. The series finale, The Last Farewell, introduced another timeline issue. The episode's events take place in 1901, over 10 years after the final season, which would make the main characters quite elderly, some in their 60s or 70s. The real Charles Ingalls died in 1902. Moreover, children introduced in later seasons, Carrie, Jenny, Nancy, James, and Cassandra, would be grown adults by then, yet on screen, the characters barely age, creating a noticeable continuity gap.